You're now listening to Voices of Lynn. My name is Justice, and I'll be your host for this episode of Table Talks. For this series, I'll be speaking with local residents, business owners, elected officials, students, as well as current and former employees of businesses here in Lynn to discuss how the COVID-19 pandemic has had an effect on them either personally or professionally, and what are some of the things that they're doing to get through it. I do want to make it clear that the opinions of our guests are theirs alone and do not reflect the opinions of our host or Voices of Lynn podcast.
Health Division, this is Michele. May I help you?
Yes, hi. Good afternoon. My name is Justice. I'm with Table Talks on Voices of Lynn podcast. I was wondering if I could speak with you briefly regarding the spread of COVID-19 in Lynn and a path moving forward for residents and business owners.
What do you do again?
I'm sorry. I'm the host of Table Talks. It's a podcast on Voices of Lynn.
Okay.
Do you have a few minutes? I just had a few questions on behalf of some of the residents and business owners in Lynn.
Business owners in Lynn?
Yes, ma'am. And residents.
All right, how long? Because I can give you 5 minutes. Can you get them all done in 5 minutes?
Absolutely. Hopefully less than that. One of the first questions I wanted to ask is if the Lynn's Health Department has been consulting with any medical professionals and scientists to determine the best practice and path forward for Lynn.
We have been following the directive coming from the CDC.
Okay. Will Lynn's Health...
The guidelines also from the CDC.
Right. And part of those guidelines, Dr. Fauci said he doesn't understand why the rest of the nation's not shutting down. Is Lynn going to be following the partial shutdown or the recommendations from Dr. Fauci to fully shut down?
You have to ask the mayor that. That's not in my call.
Okay, I definitely would. Are there any plans or protocols in place now for identifying sites in Lynn for testing and for quarantines, now that there's federal funding through community development?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Is the health department creating any protocols for businesses to reopen in Lynn after the employees have been tested? Or any protocols for public social gatherings?
So the mayor has asked that the residents of Lynn abide by the social distancing directive that was put out by everybody. And with that, to social distance 6 feet away, I understand completely how on a beautiful day like today that you would have, you would think, okay, I need to get out of this house, which I understand completely. But I hope that at that point people take into consideration as to how many people are walking around them. Are they close to somebody? Are they wearing a mask? Are they wearing gloves? They need to distance themselves.
Right. Totally makes sense. And I appreciate you sharing your perspective on that and that information. In regards to the protocols, getting back, as we know for food businesses, for example, they have to follow a certain checklist. So is the city of Lynn preparing any documents or drafts of those protocols for, let's say, a food business that's practicing the safe distancing? They're following the CDC guidelines. Are there going to be any additional local steps and guidelines created so that way when our city is contained and we can reopen business and get back to social gathering?
I think at that time we would have to take into consideration and learn from the other countries that after they did, the food establishments are open, and you can order takeout, or you can, or you have delivery. So those things. And then going for the future, I think that we need to take into consideration the social distancing. I think that should have to be taken into consideration at all times. Right
on. And as far as I use the term safe distancing because I know we're all trying to still be as social as possible in this, but as far as Lynn, is there any proactive steps that the city is taking on its own, or are we only following the directives coming from the governor and from the federal government? Is there anything that we're trying, innovative approaches, any proactive steps?
We have a mayor who is very concerned about the city and who is trying to keep everybody safe. And we're also trying very hard to mitigate the spread of the virus. And that includes trying to tell people to please stay home. I think that's the best that you can. If everybody would just try to stay home for 2 weeks until the surge passes, and then perhaps we could revisit it again to see. But I think that Lynn is taking every precaution, or is encouraging every resident to be very cautious about this virus.
Okay. Yeah, I've definitely been reading the reports coming from the mayor's office, and I appreciate the uniform message getting out to the community. Just after reading on masslive.com this morning, Dr. Fauci saying that because of their tension between federally mandated versus state rights, he's really looking at why aren't cities across the country following the recommendation for a full shutdown. From your opinion and from the Lynn perspective, the Lynn Health Department's perspective, are we going to be looking at a full shutdown anytime soon, or is Lynn trying to avoid that?
So, again, I'll go back to the mayor, because that is the mayor's decision.
Okay.
That's not my decision. But
is there a recommendation from the health department to the mayor that we should shut down, or we should go how we're doing now?
There's a lot of different components that have to be taken into consideration. You have Lynn businesses that, don't forget, we've already shut down Lynn businesses. So we've already caused an economic impact on these people. We've already caused them to have a loss of funding, of their money coming in, their weekly paychecks. They've had to go probably go online and apply for unemployment. Their food sources, their heat for right now. I mean, today is a nice day, but who's to say what the rest of the week is,
Yeah.
We've caused a lot of the virus. I'm not going to say we. The
Right.
virus has caused a lot of inconvenience. And inconvenience is such a minimal word to use. But I think it's important to try to, if you close down the food places, how are people going to survive on what they have?
Right. Oh, no, I definitely wouldn't suggest closing down all the food establishments. What I was looking at is, in these emergency times, if there's protocols either proposed by the health department or anybody else in our local government that's proposed, hey, if we're going to keep these select businesses open, let's put a concentrated effort on a protocol in addition to the safe distancing within these businesses. So that way, at least we can identify where there's not a problem, and as there's the spread around those businesses, kind of deal with those on an individual basis. Is there anything like that being discussed or considered?
That's reaching. Because every food establishment has to meet an inspection at least 3 times a year.
Okay.
So
has that changed during
No.
the COVID-19?
No.
Okay.
No, the inspections are still happening.
Oh no, I mean, is it happening more frequently? Because now there's, we don't want to risk somebody in a food establishment coughing on the food, for example. So are there other steps to really enforce?
But then that's when you have to take into consideration that the supervisor or the boss or the owner of the food establishment says to the person, you have a cough, you need to go home.
Right, okay, 100%. Well, Michele, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for answering those questions for the podcast. And I'll continue asking the mayor for any other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. You
Bye-bye.
too, bye.